Gaza War Day 349. September
No
9th.
end in sight.
No end in sight, 2024. There would have been an end in Israel's hoping for an end in sight by separating the fronts, but Nasrallah said today, if you're thinking of separating the fronts, don't even think about it. And we'll get to more on that speech a little bit later. So we both went over the pager attack on our respective shows,
Oh yeah.
and we said basically the same things.
Did we? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was
I
funny
missed
listening.
I missed your show.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was
the night
funny
before our show, so I was
listening
swamped.
listening to you. I was like, yeah, yep, exactly. Yeah, he's right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So,
Okay.
but we have it seems like the death toll is going to be 37, 3,000 plus wounded. Um, I was reading about medical aid from Iraq, Iran, Jordan. Some injured were transferred to Syria, others to Iran. I saw reports of people trying to donate their eyes, John. People trying to donate their eyeballs.
And they think they can defeat the resistance, right? They think they can shake the
Yeah.
foundations of the resistance.
Actually, I was going to tell this story later, but let me tell this story now. There was a post, I don't know if you saw this, but someone translated this post of a Lebanese guy who visited his friend in the hospital. He's not wounded, so this guy he donated blood and then he was still feeling bad and then he heard that a really good friend of his who's like got a good-natured friend of his who's always laughing and stuff is in the hospital. He got badly injured. So I'm going to read this. He goes, a young wounded friend of ours, a character, one of the most humorous people you'll ever meet, always smiling. I thought, now for sure he must be psychologically devastated. I went to visit him at the hospital a short time ago, hoping to ease his pain. I faked a smile and entered. Swear to God you played it right, I said. Now you get the injured soldier's pension and your situation is settled for good. You'll patch up the ceiling and get married. And this friend goes, injured? Who's injured? I lost an eye and two fingers, that's all. You think I was a sniper? I still have another eye and three fingers on my right hand so I can aim and shoot. Anyway, you donkey, when I shoot, I close one eye. Now this one's closed on its own. And for shooting, you only need two fingers. I have an extra one.
Oh man. That's a good story.
Yeah,
What
it's
do
a
you
pretty
think?
good
So
story.
one of the interesting things that I noticed was that Hezbollah claimed basically every single one of the martyrs. They put out a poster, they put
Mm.
out their long form name, they put
Yeah.
out the village they were from. And if you add up the number of posters, the last I counted, it was 33. And the reporting today is saying 37 dead for our kids.
Hmm.
So, did Hezbollah release the name of every single person who was killed in this pager operation?
Maybe.
It sure seems like it. And if that's the case, they're obviously not worried that some network was penetrated.
No, it doesn't look like it was. And, I saw some Russian analysts say it's obvious to him that Hezbollah is infiltrated with CIA from top to bottom. And I'm like, no, they're, you know, that's not how it would look if they were infiltrated from top to
No,
bottom.
but even I was very surprised by the open nature of claiming the
Yeah.
individuals, which would allow Israel to very openly piece together parts of a network that would be that one would think would be part of the reason why they uh like infiltrated this pager supply chain.
I think it speaks to two things. I think on the one hand, it speaks to the fact that Hezbollah is an open political party
Yeah.
and operates in large part above ground. And so it's, they're not, it's not some kind of clandestine network that can be d dismantled cell by cell or whatever, the way that you might think on the one hand. That's one thing. The other thing is it speaks to their confidence in whatever investigation they did and whatever conclusion they came to, that they know where it came from and they know what they know, and they know what the Israelis
No, too. So
know.
does that suggest that it's a kill switch on a
Yeah, I think so. I said that as like one of the possibilities, and you said it very clearly um in your report as well. Like, so when you say kill switch, just to clarify, you mean that the Israelis got the sense that that Hezbollah was on the verge of unraveling the whole thing, and so they had to set it off rather than lose the whole.
yeah, self-destruct was probably a better word than kill switch, because kill switch is actually another interesting question that I have about it. And that is, why would they put with an explosive like PETN, which is what is widely assumed was used, the difference between 1 gram or 3 grams is the difference between life and death. CNN did a report with PETN, and they used 6 grams of PETN, and it blew a hole in a metal plate that was twice the thickness of an airplane fuselage. So it doesn't take very much of this, right? There was some talk on the first day about ounces, right? It was like these weigh 2 or 3 ounces but no, it's grams. And that makes sense as to why even through Hezbollah's security efforts, something in weighing the difference of a gram or 2 or 3 isn't going to register.
Yeah, and
Why would
you
they?
know
So why did they make it just to wound people?
I think the innovation of this is primarily in the depravity of it.
Yeah.
It's unthinkable because nobody would think of it. Nobody would think of doing this because blowing up pagers without ever like there's this whole remember during the war on terror when there was this whole notion that they would target somebody and watch them for a long time and make sure they were in their car and then decide if they're in their car by themselves and they're monitoring him and
Yeah.
there's people in the command center and they're like it's him, let's get him, let's go, it's you know, and they're like but there are two other people in the car and it's
Yeah,
like that's
call it off,
unacceptable.
call it off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
it's not how they're
right?
operating.
So this whole thing is so unthinkable that like I can't everybody's like Hezbollah, how could they have allowed this to happen? And it's like, how could Hezbollah have thought of this? Who could
Well,
think of this?
well, the thing is with that explosive, they wouldn't have caught it, and so and
Yeah.
that's yeah, and it's not a plastic explosive. It was injected into the battery. So even if they did take apart each element of these pagers,
Yeah.
it's possible that they
Yeah.
wouldn't have found it.
And
But yeah.
suppose that they could sniff it out or something with dogs. There must be some way to detect it. Well, I think that's the answer to your question in the sense of there's engineering and when you're engineering something, even a bomb, there's trade-offs. And the trade-off is you lose some certainty of explosion and of the fatality and you gain some probability of not being detected. So you have to find that sweet spot.
And that's
Inject too
why with the
much.
walkie-talkies they got more, because they were more willing to put more and
Mhm.
not because the walkie-talkies had like a 50 times the kill rate, right? I think it was like 20 something and 400 wounded versus
Yeah.
12 and 3,000. So I don't know what the math is on that, but considerable. But they have outed what is not in question is that Israel has outed this entire supply chain element of this
Mhm.
operation. And that's, I think, the thing that's surprising to me, when Hezbollah released all the names, because I was very keen on watching that aspect of it. I was curious how Hezbollah was going to handle who's in the hospital, how many people are in the hospital, and the information seemed to be honest. Like the reporting from it didn't seem like they were trying to block reporting from. They even released, like, the Lebanese health services released the geographic distribution of the
Mhm.
injuries, right? So it didn't even seem like Hezbollah was in any way trying to cover up the fact that some network was was infiltrated. And I think the beauty for why Hezbollah uses the pagers is because the pagers themselves don't carry the information. The
Yeah.
pagers themselves alert you to the fact that you should be
Make a
now
phone call
looking
on a hard
for,
line. Yeah.
or talk to somebody, or put this in a pigeon's, like whatever it is, the system that they use. The
Yeah.
pager tells you to do that thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I mean, I was thinking that, well, they detonate the self-destruct switch on this, and they lose the entire operation, but they gain seeing where the 3,800 people ran to the hospital with their hand blown off, and that would become a piece of information. But it doesn't appear that
Yeah.
those elements were part of this.
That's more West Bank, right? I mean, Hezbollah's more like a state. They don't hide, like they have operational security, probably better than almost anyone in the world, but not good enough to beat this attack. But like they have operational security, but they're not hiding. They're not, and like Nasrallah almost said something along those lines, didn't he? He said something like, I don't
What?
know, or I
Why don't we
heard
do
it.
Nasrallah? Let's go right to Nasrallah.
You want to go right to Nasrallah?
Yeah.
All right.
So this is the thing: was we were waiting for Nasrallah to speak about this operation and to see how he would respond to this operation. And my interpretations, having watched the speech, was that he was super chill.
Yes,
He was
exactly.
super unflappable,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfazed.
Yeah. You
He
know that
didn't,
feeling like somebody's just hit you with everything they have and
and it,
you're still standing and you're just like,
it was very, yeah. So he begins by saying that the detonating of the pagers is without legal, ethical, moral, or political equivalent, which I think is pretty accurate, right?
Caitlin Johnstone, who I really like, she just got like I think she's the best tweeter on Twitter. But
Wow.
like she just the turns of phrase, but she was like, it's really tiring to have to say, imagine if someone else had done this to someone else, or
Yeah.
like imagine if they had done this. She's like, I know that it's really tiring to say that, but we have to say that over and over again. And
Yeah.
like the reaction to anybody else doing this, the reaction if the shoe was on the other foot, I mean,
Yeah.
we would be, yeah, be the
Yeah.
next 6 months we wouldn't hear about
So the
anything
pager
else.
attack was savage enough, but then on the Wednesday,
The
they
double tap.
detonated them. They detonated them at the funerals
Yeah.
of the people from the day before.
Yeah.
They're sick. They're
It's
sick.
it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So
Unbelievable.
Nasrallah said the pagers were some of them were off, some of them were away from people, some were not issued. So he made it seem like they weren't the most important pagers in the
Yeah, he said
organization.
the higher level commanders have old pagers, which is also an interesting thing. Like, I guess they know. I guess the Israelis know. I don't think he would have said anything that he didn't think the Israelis already knew. He's not in the business of giving Israelis new information.
And that's why the martyr posters were so interesting and
Yeah.
to be so comprehensive. Okay, so then this is in the point of the speech. This is right at the beginning of the speech. Did you hear the fighter jets?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
fighter jets flew over, and Ali Risk, his uh what's it called,
Translator,
time
official translator.
real time translator,
Yeah.
like you could see him, or you could hear his voice kind of move away from the microphone to look. And I counted them. They buzzed it 4 times during the speech, which was 45 minutes long.
Yeah, I mean, people were wondering if it was an invade. People were asking me, like, is this it? And I was like, no, I don't think this is it. I think this is just them into trying to steal Nasrallah's thunder. They always do this.
Yeah, they do always do this. I remember actually at Kaya at Israel Apartheid Week one year back in probably like 2006 or something. I had just gotten home, and had just lived was in Lebanon and was there for Nasrallah's speeches where they flew fighter
Buzzed.
jets over the speeches. And I remember saying that to the crowd. So that was 18 years ago. So this is not a new trick by Israel. So then he says, he says, this was unprecedented in the history of the resistance, he says. Then he says, in the history of Lebanon. And then he says, maybe unprecedented in the region. Actually, it's probably unprecedented in the entire world. And that's the truth. This level of an attack
I've
is
never heard
so
of it.
unprecedented for so many moral, political, ethical reasons.
Economic, like the reverberations from this in terms of
The
the
economic
technology high tech sector. Did you see the thing? Like there's some rumor. I don't know if it rises above rumor, but there's the Chinese internet is abuzz with factories being given orders from the Middle East for a whole range of devices that they're saying that they have, they can't, they're working overnight to meet this demand because they need them fast, and one of the demands is that they've never been out like this.
injected with
It has no, no,
explosives.
no, they've never been outside China. Like it has to,
Oh,
everything
yeah.
has
They
to
can't
have
be
been,
part of this
yeah,
crazy supply chain that just
everything
got
has to have
outed,
been
right?
done. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything has to have been done in China.
Yeah. It took like 4 paragraphs of the New York Times story to do all the shell companies involved in the in the in the chain of this, right? Because it was like Taiwan, and then it was like Hungary, and then it was like actually there's shell companies.
Did you see this? Stating fact, Zhao Dashuai is the name. I don't know anything about Zhao Dashuai or anything of that, but this could just all be like made by an AI or something, but it's worth, it's worth, if it's real, it's hilarious. Posts from Chinese social media stating factories are running overnight shifts to accommodate huge orders of communication devices from the Middle East. A requirement from clients is that the whole manufacturing process must be done inside China. So
Yeah. Israel
who knows?
definitely played their card on this one. So he said it's unprecedented in all these terms. And then he said, basically in the like most chill way possible, said this just makes us stronger because it makes us more determined because we're angry.
But
It makes
but
us sharper because we took a blow. He admitted, obviously, you couldn't do anything other than that. Admit
Yeah,
that
that's what
this
I
was a
wanted to say.
blow.
He concedes that it was a major blow. He says we're realistic people.
Yeah.
He says this is the nature of war and conflict. We know that our enemy has technological superiority because the West stands behind it. When we engage in this conflict, we rely on effort, sacrifice, attrition, and the accumulation of gains to win. War is a cycle, one day for us from our enemy, and one day for our enemy from us. He also says they were trying to kill 4,000 people on day one and 1,000 on day two. And he credits solidarity and medical response with saving many lives.
Mm-hmm.
You got to
He's
wonder, like, did they test? To what extent do you think the Israelis tested this?
That's
When
what
they,
I'm saying about the 1 gram. If
yeah.
they were trying to make a lethal device, because there was talk like, oh, they meant to do this during the war, right? It
Hmm.
was going to be a spectacle during the war, which you would assume meant killing people on the battlefield. Um,
Yeah.
but
Or
that,
as they're going. I assume the battlefield system, you don't need a pager on the battlefield. You need a two-way radio on the battlefield, right?
yeah, I mean, I think we saw who the people were. They were a lot of them were like
Yeah.
bureaucrats. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hezbollah is a social organization. It has many branches of people that would be
Yeah.
broadly called Hezbollah that would carry a pager.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so the Lebanese front, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of where you are, but the Lebanese front remains one of the strongest bargaining chips. You won't separate the front. He says the Israelis threatened them after day one, and then they said there's more to come unless you close the front. And then day two came.
Yeah, he said he summarized the situation in the north by doing the classic thing that he does is basically repeat what the Israelis media is saying. And he said that the north they've lost the north. The north is a historic defeat. The north shows Hezbollah's strategic achievements. The buffer zone is inside Israel for the first time. People are displaced. The economic interests in the north are completely destroyed. The
Mhm.
tourism, agriculture. They talk about a battle of attrition. They talk about exhausted soldiers.
Mhm.
They and then he said that Israel never pulled troops away from Lebanon to fight in Gaza. But to that note, the 98th Division was just redeployed to the northern border,
They
and the
pulled them
98th
from
Division,
Gaza.
well, they were on R&R from Gaza, where they were
Mhm.
the division of the IDF that was like raiding Shifa, raiding Jabalia, raiding Shajaiya, and then so they got deployed to Lebanon, which was interesting.
They're in for some surprises. Uh,
That's
so
where I got. Now I got to that it that's where I get to Hezbollah's operations are one of the most important
yeah.
negotiating cards that the Palestinians have to end the aggression. And that I
Mhm.
think is very hopefully true. I think that's part of the thing that we hope is true.
Well, of course it's true. I mean, this is a battle with Israeli irrationality at the end of the day. It's a battle
Yeah.
with Israeli insanity. And so the kinds of calculations you make about bargaining and chips, it's yeah, you're
So
trying to impose rationality on them.
he seemed to be saying that Netanyahu adding people moving home to the north as part of the Gaza war aims was actually an advantage for the
Maybe, yeah.
Palestinians because he
Yeah.
considers that he said at some point, maybe on the next page, he said that they'll never stop supporting
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Gaza.
that's it. Yeah, exactly. His thing was they're trying to separate the fronts. They've been trying to separate the fronts. Even the terrorist attack that they made, the pager attack, was to try to separate the fronts. And there's this quote that I pulled out where he says, "Our response on behalf of the martyrs and the wounded, on behalf of those who lost their eyes and hands, and on behalf of all who took this religious and moral duty to support Gaza, which is suffering from hunger, is this: to Netanyahu and Gallant, the Lebanese front will not stop until the aggression on Gaza stops." So,
Yeah, and he said Israel has respected generally the rules of engagement, has not started an open war, which historically they would have done with 1% of the attacks that have happened in the north. And he attributed that to the balance of terror and the deterrence that, and then in my notes, overflight. So there was an overflight at that point in the speech as well. And
um,
it sounded like explosions. Did you hear
d
that?
yeah, yeah, I heard it all. Did you get to when can we get to when he says at no point was the command structure undermined, shaken, or disrupted?
Yep.
Is that where you are?
Yeah. Well, the only thing in between I have is whatever be the horizon, the resistance will never stop with support of the guy with their support for
Mhm.
Gaza. And the horizons he was talking about was like wider war,
Yeah.
regional war,
Yeah.
exploding pagers, like whatever it is.
Yeah, he repeats that's almost like a recurring theme of the speech, right?
Yeah.
So he says the idea was to try to take out the command structure, try to shake and disrupt the command structure, and he says at no point was that the case. And I think that's part of why he was so chill, right? It's like he said,
Yeah.
they thought that it was our senior, command structure that had these pages, and but they have old pages, which is again, like that was a bit surprising that he would say that, right? Like that he would tell them that. But
Yeah. I think it's just such
he
an
must
open secret.
he must know they know he
Hezbollah rides around on dirt bikes and they have pagers. I think everybody knows that.
I
It's
remember
way.
Rania Khalek did this she did this video where she was pretending to be a kind of clueless Western journalist. Do you remember that? She's like Gertrude something, and
Oh,
it
I
was
remember that series of
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So she's like walking on a boardwalk, and she's like driving cars are driving by, and she's like, you can tell that they're Hezbollah by the cars they drive. And then one drives by, she's like, that's Hezbollah, that's Hezbollah. And then she like walks by a guy doing push-ups, and she's like, that guy's Hezbollah, he's preparing for war.
It's the dirt bikes.
Yeah, dirt bike.
Uh,
But she didn't mention pagers. Gertrude didn't get to that level of like pagers.
yeah, so command and control and our readiness were not impacted by the attacks. And Hezbollah said that on Tuesday right away. They said
Right.
today and tomorrow's operations will not be
Yeah, will not be
in,
paused.
impacted,
Yeah.
even not just paused.
Yeah, I don't imagine like the guys that are hunting Israeli tanks on the border are communicating by pager.
But
Like,
did Israel? Did
I
Israel
don't
think that,
know.
or did they intentionally blow up people in a supermarket and riding motorcycles and in public buses?
I
And
think for
is
them it's
that the
like,
terror attack? It's a terror attack versus a military attack.
yeah, I think both, right? Like obviously if they wanted to kill Hezbollah military men, they know exactly where to find them. They're fighting a war on the border. The militaries are eyeball to eyeball on the border. Like
Well,
you know
he
where to
said they
find them.
weren't. He said they couldn't find them, and he said that I showed on the show
Yeah.
uh on the show on Wednesday they hit a tank. What they said was a tank that was on the border, and it was sort of surprising because we haven't seen that in months. And Nasrallah made the joke
Well, yeah.
about how they're gone. We're looking for them every day. He said we consider their troops in this buffer zone as an opportunity.
Opportunity. You think it's a threat. We
You
think it's
think
a
it's a threat.
historic opportunity.
We
Yeah.
think it's a historic opportunity.
Okay, let's do that. So he repeats that theme that he speaks directly to Netanyahu. And again, this is a little different. Like I feel like he's been saying for a year, we don't want a big war, but we're ready. But in this speech, he was kind of goading. It was a little bit of a goading tone. He said, I say to Netanyahu, you will not be able to bring the northern residents back to the north. Do whatever you want. And he spread his arms and everything. And he said, this is a great challenge between us and you. The only way to achieve your goal is to stop the war on Gaza. No military escalation, no killing, no assassinations, and not even a full-scale war can return the settlers to the borders at all.
In fact, he said, your war will increase the dispossession.
Yeah.
It will destroy your economy further. It will,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was a
powerful moment.
And then the security belt thing we should say because he said your soldiers are heavily fortified and taking many precautions. It takes immense intelligence efforts to locate them and the tanks. We're searching for Zionist soldiers and tanks with lamp and fuse day and night. If they decide to come themselves, we say to them, welcome. So it would be a drastic reduction of effort for them.
We wish you'd enter Lebanon. You don't put
Yeah.
your soldiers there. We're hunting you day and night.
Mhm.
And when you come, you'll be welcomed.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like Nasrallah is intending to hold that territory. And then the next question I think would be interesting is if this war expands into the Golan more than it is now. If it's a permanent war of attrition,
Yeah.
they're going to close off the panhandle first, and they'll hold the Galilee panhandle that goes upward, which is where the famous places that have been sacked, like Metula and Kiryat Shmona.
Metula was sacked today with Falak missiles.
Yeah. The panhandle takes a lot. It's very difficult to defend, and it was the first place the Israelis left. That is true. He has not goaded, to use your word, in that way before, and I think that was the most powerful part of the not splitting the two fronts.
Yeah.
Was powerful in the fields of unity question.
Yeah.
But is a direct challenge to the Israelis that you're not
Yeah.
getting back.
Yeah.
Because that's what the Israelis say too. we're not getting, because the Israelis don't believe in negotiations. So there's no way for the Israelis to get their people back into the north because they're not willing to negotiate. And getting their people back into the north involves a prisoner exchange where thousands of prisoners come on a bus with Hamas flags hanging out the window and are released into a massive celebration. It just is something that we used to think was going to happen that I think we
Yeah.
don't believe really anymore, because if they're going to let them die. Yeah. So if you zoom that map in a bit, the panhandle
Let
is
me see
that
if I can.
is that the
Let me
panhandle is that piece at the top.
see
And if
this
you
map again.
control the panhandle, which is why Israel took it and why the borders look, or they're not borders, but why the ceasefire lines look that way, is because it protects the territorial contiguity between the Golan Heights and South Lebanon.
Oh, it's a vector. Okay, I'll try to share this now again. Let's see. Okay. So
Yeah. So if you made a straight line north, made a border that was straight line north, then you're cutting off and you're getting into the
I mean,
Syrian, the Syrian Golan there.
right.
So it's an interesting strategic question if that's what they're. I mean, you can just look at that map and see why Israel drew the borders the way they did, right? That water source through there up
Mhm.
in the panhandle, are
Or
those rivers in the
these river
panhandle up there?
here.
Just
Yeah.
so if they were planning on taking that territory, which is sort of the question that I'm sure that Hezbollah people are talking about when they say a war of attrition. This is a question I have. Like when they say war of attrition, what do they mean? And Sinwar said that about Gaza as well, that it's going to be a war of attrition. But what does that mean? Does that
Okay.
mean that
Well,
they're
strategic categories, okay? One is a war of attrition and another is a war of destruction. So a war of attrition means you're
slowly escalating up the ladder?
you're taking a little bit away and you're losing a little bit. And so the side that can endure more, whether it's because they have more resources to begin with or they can uh, accept a higher threshold of losses. Um, that's the idea. So a war of attrition generally is long, and a war of destruction can be short. So like Israel always tries to fight a war of destruction. That's Israel's way of doing things. They want to go and destroy the enemy army, right? So 1967, they went and destroyed all the Arab armies. And that's the paradigm for everything that they've ever done and wanted to do. Or like the Americans in Iraq or the Nazis in Eastern Europe. That was their goal, right? We're going to destroy the Soviet armies. And so if you can impose, it's like if you can impose a war of attrition on an army that's trying to do a war of destruction.
Yeah.
So
He called the Israelis stupid, rash, greedy, narcissistic, focused on personal ambitions that will lead it to the abyss, which I just thought that's a very succinct summation of what we're watching. There's just absolutely no uh, self-preservation instinct that's happening in Israel
yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
that's the thing. That's the thing that we find missing. Um, yeah,
And
that's
that
the thing.
we've
Okay,
given them way too much credit for over these months
I've
as we
continuously I can't it's like an addiction I have or something. I can't seem to get I can't seem to get it out of my head.
because
But
this event also shows the Americans aren't going to step in, because the Americans are there. They know what's going on. And this kind of an attack, if these Americans are allowing these kind of attacks that could trip an open war, which is a totally reasonable ex expectation from blowing up,
mhm.
4,000 people and killing them, if that was the intention, the Americans aren't going to stop them in Lebanon either. And I think when we
No.
began these sit reps 8 months ago, I believed that the Americans, and I think I even remember saying it on EI in the early shows that the Americans will draw a line at open war with Lebanon, but
There's
none of
no
these.
Americans
There's no
drawing
American.
anything.
There's no
There's no,
Americans.
yeah, like it's just a weapons factory. It's just like
Yeah.
people keep saying that. I don't know if I've ever said this on a video before, but like people keep saying that Israel is the forward base of American imperialism. But I kind of think America is just the rear base of Israel. Like America is the logistics hub
Yeah.
of Israel. You know, they're just
Yeah.
there to pump out the bombs and back,
Well, when they
make.
were a forward base, Lebanon was destroyed, right? The Palestinians were being chased out of Lebanon. Jordan was a compliant state. Egypt had just signed a peace agreement that made them step down from
Yeah,
from playing any Arab role.
that's the
And
80s. That's the
yeah,
late 70s.
yeah, like a generation after the Cold War period. That they would be like that they would the Americans believed that it was strategically useful for them, for the Americans to
Hmm.
bury weapons in Israel so that they could use Israel as a forward base. And now, yeah, like you say, now it's the reverse. They're constantly feeding these guys
Yeah.
weapons just to survive.
Here's the thing. I've been trying to figure out this days and I'm gonna have to ask like one of my Arabic teachers or something because
He
there's
said it
days
again.
and between us are the days and nights. But he said between us are the days and nights and maybe months and years, which told me that that's a different meaning than I thought. So I think what he was saying all along was between us, like we're gonna share some time together on the battlefield. Like we have this time that we're both gonna be spending on the battlefield. And this was him when he extended it basically saying for the first time, I think, that he understands that this is a long war of attrition. And it's interesting too, because he said this is a connection I just made. He said he extended it to years on the battlefield. A couple days ago, Sinwar wrote him an open letter saying, "We're ready for a long war of attrition." So I actually think these letters that Sinwar is sending are not just symbolic. I think they're communicating. It might be the only way they can communicate. I don't know. Or like it might be one of the important ways that they communicate to one another through open letters.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've sit repped this yet because the Sinwar letters are a new product of the fact that he's the overall commander of
Yeah,
Hamas
he's the
now.
Haniyeh made these kinds of communications, but
Yeah,
Sinwar didn't. But
yeah.
now he's in that role. Yeah.
And he delivered that letter to um, Abdel Malik Badruddin al Houthi
Yes. Yeah.
within something like 4 to 6 hours
Yeah.
because the attack
Houthi,
he
by the way,
he
didn't speak today. It's his Thursday address, but I think he told people watch Nasrallah today. I'll speak on Saturday.
I'll see you at the demo tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, uh, yeah, I think that the represent acknowledging all of the martyrs the way that Hezbollah did seems to indicate that they don't believe that their network was penetrated,
That's
and
right.
they don't believe that the Fuad Shukr assassination was related to this like whatever word we want to use, penetration of the system,
Mhm.
which was immediately when this attack went off, the first thing that I thought was this is how they got Fuad
Mm.
Shukr. I thought it was a self-destruct button from the immediate reporting. Like the minute when we were hearing that like 300, 500, that it seemed like a kill switch. A kill switch is probably not the right word to use. Self-destruct. This system will
This
self-destruct.
message will self-destruct. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
It's incredible time. These days are
yeah,
just we were like going on the air with the EI show too. It's like because it's
yeah.
like Tuesday night, we're trying to get all the production. I'm trying to get all my production materials finished, and then this attack happened on that day, and then it was like I got that all under control. we're just about to go on the air, and they hit the funerals with
Mhm.
more explosions, and it's just like every single day of these last 11 months has been just wavering back and forth between these huge strategic events and then these brutal crimes. I imagine we're going to get to the West Bank.
Yeah, shall we? We might as well cover the other. Well, let's do. Well, Yemen. Malik Houthi skipped his speech, like I said. Um, let's do the Lebanon front. I mean, we don't.
Okay.
I don't think it started. I don't think it's kicked off, but I do think it may have kicked off the only way it's going to kick off, or maybe the invasion will still happen. Um, but they just, as it stands, they're just going deeper and deeper into each other's. They're just striking deeper and deeper into each other's territories, and with bigger and bigger weapons. So
Yeah.
Metula was basically just taken out today. Like there's no electricity, there's no comms, there's a media blackout in Safad, and Hezbollah said Falak missiles, which have a what 500-pound
Yeah.
payload,
The Burkhans. Yeah.
Burkans. Yeah.
Yeah, they hit. There's a drone attack that the Israelis are already admitting to two killed in that drone attack and something like 18 wounded. Then there was an anti-tank missile hit that they're saying has at least six more seriously wounded. So today was a big day on the Lebanon
Mhm.
attack front.
And Israel's also hitting deeper, and they're doing machine gun. I saw machine gun fire. I saw artillery.
Yeah, they exchange fighters exchange fire. Like human fighters exchanged fire, which is we've
Mhm.
been using standoff weapons in this
Yeah.
front for uh, weapons that you shoot from a distance. But this looked today like they were very up close and personal. But this is the thing about invading, right? The reason why I'm skeptical of an invasion is because the Israeli army has to move through this buffer zone that exists in their country, not
Yeah.
in Lebanon.
But
So
there are not Hezbollah troops in that part of the country.
not in Israel,
They have what
but
you
they're
may
all
call,
over.
I believe, what's called fire control.
Yeah, and they
Um,
have troops in. They have more troops.
mhm.
Hezbollah has more troops ready to cross the border, such as it is, than Israel currently has to cross the other border, to
That's
cross the
interesting.
border the other way.
And you may
Because,
know Yemen and Iraq have both announced that if Nasrallah gives the go-ahead, they will be sending human waves of troops to Lebanon to fight the Israelis.
yeah, I like the Houthi spirit. I don't know. I don't
They
know
can get there.
logistically how they're going to get there. I think you've pulled that map up before.
They have to invade Saudi first, I guess.
Well, they've proved they can do that. But yeah, so a lot of activity on a lot of Hezbollah activity
Yeah.
at a time when one might consider that period would be a period of at least like modest regrouping or
Adjustment.
something adjustments, but no.
Well, I mean, that's why that also speaks to the truth of what Nasrallah said when he said there was not even a moment of disruption of their command structure.
Can you prove that?
Um, West Bank, okay. Fighting in Qabatia and Jenin, you probably saw that atrocity where they threw they killed somebody and they threw him off a roof. There's a
Threw
video of that.
three people off the roof?
Yeah.
Yeah. They threw three people off the roof. They killed seven people at least fighting in Jenin.
Yeah.
Kabati is just a village right outside of Jenin on the road into Jenin.
Uh, Tubas, they attacked checkpoint. The resistance attacked Taysir checkpoint. Nablus, there's fighting. That's what I saw today. I
Yeah,
don't know
there's
if
fighting
there's
in Balata camp.
yeah. Balata being the camp beside Nablus.
Yeah. And like this, the story about the 2006 Fatah Hamas thing where Fatah made up the stories that
Mhm.
Hamas threw everybody off roofs. That was never true. And now the Israelis well, that was an Israeli coup, is my point. And then so they really do. It's just such a brutal crime. I wish we could be more articulate on this some of the time, but
How many
to
different
just
words? Yeah.
throw people off a roof dead, and we're gonna find out that they're teenagers, right? Like,
But it's just, yeah, it's just like it's just like the pager attack. It's like you're just like, what does that do? Like, you already killed him. Like,
yeah,
you're just showing what a weird
yeah,
culture. Anyway, so Gaza massacres, Haitham School in Gaza City, Jabalia, Nusayrat. But then you're gonna have quite a few videos to show on Wednesday, aren't you?
I am. Yeah,
Namr and a D9 hit in Rafah. Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade said they hit a Merkava in Rafah.
yep,
Qassam says they destroyed a convoy of Zionist vehicles in Rafah near the Kuwaiti hospital. Video for that too.
yeah. We saw them hit three Namers in a row, and we saw them use a Shawad explosively formed penetrator, which is the most devastating weapon in their arsenal, and they took it and put it in a tree, and then the Namer drove by with the tank commander riding outside of the vehicle, and the EFP went off at head height on the vehicle.
So
So, and they couldn't. The
my
Israelis claimed
injuries.
10 casualties in fighting on Tuesday, a booby trapped building. And then we saw the videos today. They released the videos of what was reported on Thursday.
This is
So that's still,
162 division.
yeah. So they're still able to like basically in very short time release the messages, the video messages from the field through Rafah, and like an abandoned town that's completely destroyed, and the Israelis have full overwatch of, and the fighters can still hit them in all these spots.
So the
Yeah, and then there was another.
162nd has armored brigade,
Yeah,
artillery, and 3 infantry brigades. Givati, Nahal, and a reserve.
yeah, a full complement. It's a full complement, whereas the 252nd that's in the Netzarim corridor is only 2 brigades. Yeah,
So, yeah, that's Gaza. And then Iraq. Did we mention Iraq? Iraq is still hitting Haifa. And they also said, a spokes from Iraq said they're going to the next phase. We announced the transition to a new phase of confronting the enemy, which in the coming days will reveal in stages according to the predetermined plan. We affirm our continued support for Gaza. So I don't know what that means, but
I don't know
they
what that
said it'd be
means.
revealed in the coming days. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we're just watching it expand. But this was for me, the difference in Nasrallah's tone was significant. He said he thinks it could go on for years. He very much said, "Do what you got to do" to Netanyahu. Like, you do whatever you got to do, but your people are not coming back to the north except by agreement.
Yeah. So in all of these ceasefire talks and all the negotiations, when people were saying like it takes days to get messages to Sinwar,
Yeah.
he seems to be showing that that is not the case, because he's releasing these messages that are, they're not just single references. They're peppered with time, like effective timestamps, by saying,
Yeah.
I saw you celebrating the prophet's birthday.
Hmm.
Your missile penetrated deep into Israel. They were
Hmm.
unable to intercept it, which didn't actually come out right
Hmm.
away. That wasn't clear. So you get the window of time that he
Hmm.
sent it is like, it's very specific.
Maybe
So
it
that,
takes long to get messages when it's a BS negotiation.
yeah, yeah, which it obviously is. There's a difference between using your abilities to communicate with a qualitative upgrade in attack from the support front versus bickering back and forth with
Exactly.
Mossad, who he knows
Is not going to
isn't even
fulfill.
speaking for Netanyahu, right?
Yeah,
Like they don't agree themselves in Israel on what the deal is.
exactly.
Their own people at those meetings don't agree with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was another thing in the Israeli Moshe Yalon, who's the former
Oh yeah.
head of the army. He made a state. He said something that the other day about how all the people that were involved in October 7th have to resign, but that the
Mm.
reason all the generals, but the reason that they're not is because if they do now, then Netanyahu just replaces them
With his
with
own
his people.
stooges.
So he's basically telling the military, like, let's just wait this out. It's like it's such a
It's a
broken
deep
society,
crisis. Yeah.
deep crisis that is not being talked about because of their hidden. Because there was a story in the Israeli press yesterday about Israel recruiting this new 96th division, the David's division, which is made up of reservists who are 35 years or older and who had exemptions from service for whatever reason. And so they're calling them back and putting them into this unit. And the unit is 15,000 soldiers. So there's always this number that's like 10,000, 15,000 that they're short, right? And their casualties don't really their honest casualties don't really match these numbers. But the number that they're looking for is oddly consistent. So it seems to match the number of casualties that actually exist. But yeah, and so this new unit that they're trying to build of reservists who are already exempted, they've already filled all of the commanders' roles, but they only have a fighting strength of 25%. So they're like bringing people back in by being like, you get to be the boss. And so people are like, I'll sign up for that. But to be in the actual army, uh, they're saying no. And Nasrallah referred to that today because they want to bring a brigade of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Navy
I saw that.
sailors and train them in infantry and bring them into this David's division. So
And they have
these
plans
are,
for African asylum seekers
and
trying
then
to.
we got the story last week from Haaretz that, which is obviously the tip of the iceberg, because it was a direct face-to-face conversation with someone who was recruited and explained how he was recruited and what it looked like. And then when he went back to his friends said like that's how it looked to us too. And so you have to be someone who didn't take that choice, right? So the implications that of what this asylum seeker was saying
Yeah.
is sounded to me like most of the people that were asked would probably agree to it because it was like hand selected people who fit a
Mhm.
certain soldiering body
Yeah.
type or whatever. And the source in the Haaretz article was like, I've never picked up a gun in my life, they picked the wrong person or whatever. But that he revealed this whole chain of like he got this message, then he was told to report to this, post, and when he got to that post, he was sent to a second post. So it's like he revealed the infrastructure that exists, and then that story is released by the military censor. So that presumes that the military censor says, yeah, you can talk about these two people because the
Yeah.
story was basically had two people that were talking in it. Uh,
Well, the the tough guys, I guess the tough guys are like strolling American campuses ready to bust the heads of pro-Palestine protesters. So it's hard to
they're not
find
in the
people to
army.
actually
Yeah,
fight in the army.
yeah. Well, these are indications of a deep crisis in a sick society, and this week is really um, killing people's kids because the pager was on the table,
And
or
and and yeah, I saw like one of these names that was familiar to me from like the whole Syria break in the Palestine movement. I don't know if this guy was ever a Palestine guy, but his name is Oz Chatterjee or something. anyway, he said, if that girl shouldn't have used the pager that her dad used to commit terrorism. So like it was a very
So
casual, very casual dismissal of. I saw lots of those, but like coming from people who, I don't know,
yeah,
just
I think that guy's not worth our time.
yeah,
Um, but uh, Israel, the Ministry of
yeah. There's
Foreign
like a
Affairs put
pager.
out.
Do you have your pager on you? Kind of joke
Yeah,
meme
they
going
make
around.
jokes, but the actual official Ministry of Foreign Affairs Israel Twitter page, 10
Yes.
minutes after the attack, put out a message that said, "Retweet if you're a proud Zionist," and the Canadian embassy
Mhm.
retweeted it. And so they are, and the Arab Affairs journalist for the state broadcaster put out a tweet on his account that says he's part of the state broadcaster that had the Hezbollah martyr posters, but had a pager that said like, and that said something rude on the pager. A bit
Mhm.
on a depth of level, we're just seeing such sick.
Yeah.
I don't know what these people ever come back from that. If Israel is
Yeah.
believing that it's fighting an existential war, they have definitely pushed that into reality. Like spoke that
Yeah.
into reality.
And like, yeah. And like the whole right to exist, making their right to exist contingent on what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yes, interesting choices they've made. All right, well, that's tonight, right? That's a
I think
wrap.
so.
God knows what tomorrow will bring. That was a completely thrown for a loop. Nasrallah said he wasn't even planning to speak again until October 7th.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did he say that?
Yeah, he said that at the beginning. He said I wasn't going to speak until October 7th and
Oh,
assess
I
the
missed that.
events of the year, but obviously I have to speak now. Yeah, I
Because he
mean,
he knows there's no commemoration speech between now and then.
yeah.
Because he
But
never misses his commemoration speeches.
can you imagine? There's like, yeah, a couple of weeks to October 7th, but I feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen between now and then.
Yeah.
And we'll be here to cover it. Maybe not on YouTube. Who knows?
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that, did we? Did
If
you
they
tell
take
your
us down, you
audience?
guys, I'll be somewhere. You'll find me. Just look for me, okay? I'll be somewhere. You'll find me somewhere. Substack or somewhere.
I mean, I think that was one of the things that we learned about the show getting taken down for my segments was that people came to find us
Yeah,
where
I'll find
they
you.
looked around for us. So I think some of these platforms make us believe that
We
their
need them.
algorithm, yeah, that we need them, that the algorithm is somehow what gives us, because there's a difference between your segments on YouTube going viral or having an audience. Like
Yeah,
any old video can go viral,
that's right.
but your audience, the numbers that are your core audience, I hope you guys will follow us wherever we do go because it looks like it looks like
We're
they're
not
we're
we're
in.
not destined for we're not here for long. Yeah, they have to get rid of us at some point.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think like them. Like, of course they have to get rid of it.
I mean, I get messages all day, every day from people saying, I can't search you. You're not in my feed. They unsubscribed me. There's like a dozen different things that people say that happens that are, um, yeah, they're really like sly, right?
Yeah,
They're not to disappear you from the timeline.
yeah,
Uh, it, yeah, it's very sly the way they do it because you believe that oh, you're just not, it's because they're not tweeting or whatever it is. So stay strong.
hang in there. Like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.